vast but sparsely populated country. A resource-based economy, tons of migrants, very dependent on China. So sounds like I'm talking about Russia right now. But no. Since 1992, the economy of this country has been growing continuously for 28 years. The population has increased by more than 1.5 times, and people's incomes have almost tripled. So where do such miracles happen? In Australia. First off, what is Australia? It's a massive country continent. Its size can be compared to that of the USA, but only in terms of landmass, because in terms of population, Australia has 13 times fewer people, so 26 million compared to 334 million in the States. So think about it. Australia is a country where population density is one of the lowest in the world. On average, there are 3 people per square kilometer. And apart from its sparse population, the country earns its income by selling its resources. 65% of Australia's exports are minerals like ore, oil, gold, gas, aluminum, and a bit of oil. But Australians have also learned to sell their education, services, and tourism. But the question is different. How does a country that has been feeding China for the last 30 years not become its mere resource appendage and set a historical record for continuous economic growth? Put simply, Australia don't reinvent the wheel. Like Dubai, China, Singapore, and Japan, they simply open up to the outside world at some point. And what does that mean? But remember, Dubai didn't really have anything to start with. No infrastructure, no oil, no tourism. But they were lucky to have wise leaders who cleverly used their decent geographic location and devised Dubai's wealth from scratch. Well, they invited foreigners with a lot of spare money. And China, in the 1980s, had the same story with infrastructure, oil, and the same investors. Yes, there was a billion cheap labor force, but it wasn't engaged in what was needed, and everything started to turn around only with their own wise leaders appear. And all these achievements are not accidental, because each country analyzes the success of others and takes the best for itself. For example, Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping, on the eve of his major reforms in 1978, personally visited Singapore to understand in detail how their small neighbors create such a technological and profitable economy. Sheikh Rashid Ibn Said, before reforming Dubai in 1958, traveled across Europe and consulted with British ministers. And in the 2000s, the Chinese will be heading to Tokyo to thoroughly dissect their success and then even the stagnation of the Japanese economy. And again, Australia in the 1970s, 80s of the 20th century. The mood and picture across the country were roughly like in the movie Mad Max. So it was filmed in Australia. And all because the government endlessly support local Australian guys so that they don't lose out of foreigners. And foreigners see that the playing field is uneven and aren't particularly keen on to invest. And what? Do all local businesses thrive and flourish due to this continuous care? Not quite. So there is little competition, production is shrinking, and labor productivity is declining. And as a result, the country has been in crisis for decades. But then, in Australia, they decided to hell with those trade barriers that protect locals, but actually just limit competition. And they also let the local Australian dollar float freely. And this is the first key step. Essential, the country is showing the world, we are open, come on in. And foreigners come in with their pockets full of cash. As I mentioned, the population will grow from 17 million to 26 million. And over these 30 years, almost half of all private businesses are now owned by foreigners. Plus, foreign investors have also snapped up a third of all Australian company shares, and nobody planning to run away just yet. Essentially, Australia is following a proven path. Everything good will grow on its own, while everything competitive will be sifted out. And here lies the second key to the country's economic success: filtering and inviting only the right migrants. So it's a remarkable feat for a country that essentially consists of migrants itself. So just for context, Australia is home to over 500 different nationalities, while indigenous Australians make up only 2.5% of the population. Although initially Australia, this country, has never been a destination for undesirable migrants. You see, all the way to the edge of the world, the British, who owned these territories, would send criminals there. Essentially, they sent them to the USA. But when they declared independence, they had to send them even farther, to Australia. But to the Australian shores, they don't send ducks. Those usually meet their fate rather swiftly. So instead, they send political prisoners to ensure they never return. And they also send any petty criminals to prevent them from tarnishing decent society. And when the convicts serve their sentences in Australia, they typically stay on the continent as free settlers. So you see, once you are in Australia, it's unclear how far you'd have to sail to get out of there, or if you'd even make it. So it's better to stay there. Essentially, each new migrant strengthens the society because those who choose to come to Australia clearly aren't afraid to take risks. And those who work off their sentences on the chain gang and survive also aren't afraid of work. But this is just a feature of the overall portrait of the country, because today no convicts dock in Australia. Those who go there are either very wealthy and educated, or those who want to obtain an education. So remember, I mentioned earlier that the country has learned to sell its knowledge for huge sums of money. So it sells even more of it than its famous marble meat and other agricultural products. And people go there to study because it's 30 or 40% cheaper than in Europe or the USA. And many who receive education there stay. So well, great climate, convenient cities, a growing economy, and overall, as Australians believe, if you flip the map, then they are the center of the world. So this story about proper education is a lesson for other countries. How not to squander those you educate and entice those who are trainable and will be beneficial rather than bolting immediately. Remember that natural resources are finite, but intellectual ones are renewable. So before COVID, 875,000 foreign students were studying in the country, when the entire population of the country is only 25 million. So every 28th person on Australian territory is a foreign student. But naturally, the Australian miracle wouldn't have happened without natural resources. And this is the third key to success, because in the 90s, the country was still fueling then growing Japan. And when it slowed down, China came into play. By the early 2000s, it was the world's factory needing these natural resources, and Australia became the main stoker of the Chinese economic engine. A continuous stream of iron ore, coal, and gas flows. Prices for these goods rise. But there is no resource curse for Australia because the Chinese pay not only for what is extracted in Australian quarries and mines, they start buying real estate and receiving the same inexpensive but quality education. So Chinese and Indians account for half of all foreign students in Australia. And do you know how much they contribute to the local economy each year? Over $10 billion. And this makes not being afraid to open up to the world, adopting honest laws for all, not hesitating to sell resources, but not pocketing the money from them, but investing it in their own people, is what leads to economic miracle.